Well, I want to talk to you, Sarah, about team quizzes. Teachers are always on the hunt for effective assessment methods. And for those looking for one that combines collaborative learning with an efficient way to measure students' progress, then you might be interested in learning more about team quizzes. In a recent article in Edutopia, educator Jay Schauer talks about how it works. So here's what it would be for your next assessment, such as a quiz. You have your students work on it solo, writing their answers in a black pen. Next, rather than collecting those quizzes right away, you arrange the students in groups of about 4, usually combining different levels of mastery, and have them work on the quiz together. But have the students make any revisions to their original paper using a different color pen so that you as the instructor can measure how a student has improved in their mastery following the collaboration. Then, once the first round is done, you have each group rotate or trade out one of its members to go over the quiz again and create some additional cross-pollination among each group. Once the collaborations are complete, the students finalize their answers and turn in their assessments for grading. From the article, quote, "The strategy helps students to learn from each other as well as learn teamwork and persuasive speaking skills to support their ideas if they disagree with their peers." Now, Sarah, if you want an additional twist on this, one of the things that you can do as the instructor is randomly select one paper from each group and then assign everybody in that group that paper's grade. Not only does that mean less grading time for the instructor, but it encourages students to help their peers because obviously all the students are getting the same grade. So you're going to want to make sure that your colleagues have strong mastery of the material. What do you think? Team quizzes, you on board?
Well, I have to admit, the first time you said team quizzes, I thought you meant something very different. I thought you were talking about like academic quiz bowls, and I was
well, we can all get on
really
board with
excited.
that. Those are fun as all get out.
Those are really fun. But I like the idea of what you're describing because it really does introduce some element of defending your answer, right? And that's a really critical educational component when we're talking to our students. I encourage teachers all the time when I'm working with them to ask 2 very powerful questions when students give an answer, regardless of what the question is. How and why, right? How do you know? Why is that your answer? Those are really powerful questions because it takes any question, whether it's a lower level question or a higher order thinking kind of question, and it increases the rigor of that question by forcing students to defend their answer. A lot of times, whenever we're working with teachers on developing questions and also working with students on helping them to develop better answers, we talk about developing questions that have a race response, something that the student would need to restate, answer, cite, and explain. So if students aren't able to do those 4 things, the question may not be difficult enough or challenging enough for them to actually engage with the material. Not that there's no benefit to other kinds of questions, but that's really important. So when you're talking about having another student come in and give their feedback on it, it sounds like that's a really good tactic to get students to be able to defend those answers, right? Answer and explain why. Cite where you found that answer. You have that different colored pen and you can explain, well, so-and-so introduced this and it reminded me of that, and back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I love assessments that can accomplish multiple goals for an instructor while achieving the equally important goal of not just saddling the instructor with extra work, and whether it's extra grading work or extra instructional time taken up, but any assessment method that can give you a way to assess how a student's mastery has progressed with the different color pen, that encourages peer learning, that gives students an opportunity to advocate for their particular thought process and speak and defend their answers. You get all of that without necessarily adding additional instructional burden on the teacher. I think it's really interesting. Now, I would imagine that different subject areas might work well with this method better than others. I believe the author of the article talks about how this is particularly valuable in math classes where you are having the students doing multiple step problems, such as more advanced math classes. Statistics classes apparently have a lot of success with this method. I would imagine other subject areas may or may not benefit from this as much, but I would say it's at least worth educators adding this as one additional arrow in their quiver, whether you would make all your assessments like this, which is probably not the way to go, but having it as one extra approach particularly for subject matter that has multiple steps that's particularly conducive to facilitating discussions amongst peers. This could be a really great method.
I'm glad you mentioned that it's something that would facilitate discussion, because when you take it in that sense, um, yes, math with multi-steps, I was thinking that would be really beneficial. I can think of a lot of different opportunities though in different subject areas. You know, if you're talking about something in a language arts class and you want to get, let's say, for example, that you are discussing an author's perspective on something or even writing an essay, it's very beneficial to have another student's perspective in that and to give additional feedback. Same with maybe we do a lot of, in social studies classes, they do things called DBQs, right? Document-based questions or database questions. And those are things that really require a lot of critical thinking. And so having another student's perspective in the mix and bringing that into it would be a fantastic way for students to see, okay, this would further my thinking as such. And then the idea of grading and making this one of multiple types of grading, I think is really important, because we have to remember as educators that there are assessments of learning and there are assessments for learning. And it seems like this is a really fantastic assessment for learning that would be something that pushes the thought forward, and not necessarily as a culminating assessment to gain understanding of how much a student has mastered a particular concept.
Yeah, it definitely works as an assessment in that sense. I'm with you on that.